Hi all, hope you're feeling well today, hope you're feeling peaceful, hope you're feeling grounded. Today's video is about meditation props, and more specifically, are meditation props necessary in order to meditate, and are they necessary in order to find inner peace? You want the short answer, and in Zen we love short answers. The answer is no. So thanks for stopping by. Job done. But if you'd like a little more elucidation on that, and why they're not necessary, and if they're not necessary, why do I have them? Then that's what we're about to get into. So thanks for stopping by. As always, any likes or subscribes are appreciated. But don't worry about it, if not. It's all good. It's all good. So meditation props. Why do I have the ones that I have? And are they necessary? Let's explore that a little deeper. So, if you know me and you know this channel, you probably know generally what I'm about. I'm not going to go through the introductions or any explanations again. But I'm into Zen Buddhism, if we have to call it anything at all. I'd rather not give it a name, because when we name something, we destroy it, essentially. And there's a famous Zen koan, which goes, I'm going to butcher this, by the way, but it says, do the rivers have Buddha nature? This is one student speaking to a Zen master. Do the fields have Buddha nature? Do the rivers have Buddha nature? Are the trees enlightened? Is the grass enlightened? Tell me. And the Zen master said, yes, but it's such a shame to say so. And this is about the moment we place labels and names upon things, we actually remove our ability to be at one with the way, the Tao, to be at one with ourselves and with the world. So it's very much a shame that I have to say, yes, I'm into Zen Buddhism, because I'd rather not give it a name. And there is no name. It's supposed to be nameless and nothingness. But therein lies our funny little trick. Surely we have to call it something, don't we? Well, I don't know. That's the subject of some debate also. So as you can imagine, as we don't like this tendency to name and label and place images upon things, Zen is also characterized by lack of sort of objects and a lack of rituals and even a lack of texts. They speak of trying not to get too into the kind of the scriptures and the texts for the reasons that I just described about not naming and labeling things. If we get our minds too bogged down in concepts and ideas and theories, we're simply right back to square one with our problem in trying to figure things out and in trying to be right and to try and have a psychological, mind-based understanding. But enlightenment is freedom from the person, not for the person, from the person. And so if we want to find that inner peace, it's about leaving all of that behind. But it can be helpful. It needs to bring us to a certain point. But at a certain point, we have to step through that gate. And stepping through the gate involves just letting go of all concepts, letting go of this idea that you're a person upon a journey. Let's let go of that as well. There's no one really here. It's all just temporary. It's all just flowing. It's all just direct experience. And if we're holding on too much to this scripture, and we're holding on too much to names and labels and words, and as I'll get into, objects, then we're beginning to remove our power to find peace. Because so much about our peace is about a letting go. And let yourself off the hook. There's nothing to understand. Nothing at all to understand. It's just about, just leave it all. Leave it all. Leave it all. The mind doesn't like this. The mind wants to understand. It wants to know. Next, the mind likes rituals, and if I purchase and own this object, will this give me a greater understanding and a greater sense of peace if I have this thing? The mind loves this. And so, naturally, my general take on meditation props is that actually they're not necessary. They are not necessary at all. And if we become too attached to the objects, we are beginning to miss the point. That's going to be my take on things. But I could be wrong. Of course I could be. And the opposite, or the converse argument, is that our minds are so busy and noisy that actually it helps to have these objects, particularly in the beginning. And this could be our incense, it could be the gongs, it could be some statues to sort of meditate and to meditate in front of, or to contemplate, and to have these objects in order to begin our journey of meditation, but then at some point later we can drop all of that away. I would recommend the opposite way, the opposite approach, and actually we've had enough materials. We've had enough buying materials and obtaining materials and owning materials, and just let yourself off the hook with that. Just begin your journey in meditation with just finding what's already here. What have you arrived with? What's your state that you're in now? Just breathe deeply and just let's just become aware of where we're at now and how we're feeling now, and not engaging too much with mind. Allow thought to come and go. Come and go, rise and fall without getting involved. Just don't get involved anymore with your mind. We've had enough. And letting that go. However, with that in mind, how then have I ended up with a table full, a little shrine, if you will, of meditation objects, books, books? That's a bizarre way of saying it. Books. I'm going to blame that on the fact I've got a little bit of a cold. So I guess I'm adding a T before my S's now. I have incense, and obviously a burner and an empty bowl. So let me just explain how these things have accrued over the years. So although I am into Zen and to a lesser extent Advaita, I have found that it is useful to have little reminders, and the first one that I picked up was actually the Buddha statue. I was in one of these spiritual shops and saw this statue here, this lovely green statue, and Buddha won't mind me picking him up. There you go, boss man. There you go. That's the one that I found right there. Nice and heavy, and I don't know, something stuck out about this particular one. It's been with me for quite a while, and it's just, obviously we can all recognise that statue. It already comes with a great deal of weight of our symbolic meaning behind that image, the image of the sitting Buddha. So if I'm in my room or in my flat and I just see this, it automatically just is like a reminder. Almost. It's not something that I worship. Zen would say, no, you're not here to worship the Buddha. Another fascinating Zen koan says, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. That's quite an intense thing. I mean, you wouldn't have religions or spirituality or philosophies, we regard things as sacred, as absolutely sacred. And so Zen goes the opposite way with this, and in many ways Buddhism goes the opposite way with this. And it's like, no, it's just because they're trying to remind you not to become attached to an image. To remind you to not become attached to an image, that's that. But the reminder is quite useful, I find, to go, oh yes, so I might be going about my life and getting too tied up in personhood and too tied up in this, that and the other. I see the statue and, oh yeah, it reminds me I'm I'm trying to be like your boy here. So the position that the Buddha is in here, seated with palms cupped, and the most telling thing about the Buddha here is this very wry smile, just a hint. It's not a big beaming grin, it's not completely solemn, just enough of a little smile, almost like the Mona Lisa's sort of smile, like she knows something that you don't. And that little smile is enough to pique your interest in just what do they know that I don't? So that's the Buddha. That's why I have that one there, and that was the first one. Let's take a look at, let's go with these books, because if we're not looking at getting too into our scriptures and too into the information and mind-based stuff, why books? Because that's going to require words. Words is going to create concepts, and words is going to create names and labels. But Zen poems, as you'll see here, are very few in words, and a good Zen poem is as few words as possible. Can we convey what the monk or poet was trying to just get across? And I think I have quite a good... Well, I've always been interested in words and appreciated poetry and appreciated words. Not everybody will be. Some people are more visual or more physical, but I've always been very, very into words. So Zen poems really stuck out to me. They really spoke to me when I started to read some. Let's just read one here. Coming, going, the waterfowl leaves not a trace, nor does it need a guide. And that's just beautiful. It's just like a little meditation pointing in itself. So the waterfowl, it comes and goes and leaves no trace. There's no footprints anywhere, it just flies and comes and goes. Nor does it need a guide. So if the waterfowl needs no guide, then how does it know where to go? Is it ever coming and going? There's no guide, it's not trying to be anywhere. The waterfowl just does what it does. It leaves no trace and needs no guide. Just gorgeous, gorgeous words to help bring ourselves closer into peace. Haikus, very much the same. Not as much a fan. You'll notice this one's a bit more worn than this one. I don't know why. Perhaps with the haiku we're restricted a little bit by the syllable count, and restricting is not what we're about. We're about removing rules and constrictions and constraints. Just let it go. And then an amazing compilation of Zen koans compiled by Paul Reps called Zen Flesh, Zen Bones. And a Zen koan is, our koan, K-O-A-N, has no real English translation. But the closest we could probably look at it would be a puzzle, a riddle, sometimes a joke, maybe, in fact, puzzle, riddle and joke. Let's just put all those three together, and that's probably quite close to what we would say is a koan. And let me look at some of these. Okay, this one, okay, all of this is just the one that naturally I've opened on, and it actually elucidates a little bit more about the points I was making Yamoka Teshu, my apologies for the translation, I've probably said that completely wrong. As a young student of Zen visited one master after another, he called upon Dokuon of Shokuku. Desiring to show his attainment, he said, "The mind, Buddha, and sentient beings, after all, do not exist. The true nature of phenomena is emptiness. There is no realization, no delusion, no sage, no mediocrity. There is no giving and nothing to be received." Dokuon, who was smoking quietly, said nothing. Suddenly, he whacked a Yamoka with his bamboo pipe. This made the youth quite angry. "If nothing exists," inquired Dokuon, "where did this anger come from?" Great little question, a great little riddle. As if in Buddhism we're saying nothing exists, everything is temporary, there's nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here, nothing here. It's just empty, empty, empty. Then we find ourselves angry because we got hit. Well, where's the anger coming from if that's nothing? An interesting point for contemplation, and some Buddhists would, in certain schools of Zen, will be given a koan by a master, and they say, right, solve this riddle, solve this koan, that is your meditation. And monks will spend years and years and years contemplating a single koan. Huh? How interesting. Matey boy here, Yorick. Quite morbid, really, isn't it? Picture of a skull. It's quite morbid. Permit me a sip of my coffee here. This is not intentional. I just could use a little refreshment. The skull. The skull. Memento mori. As they say in Latin, remember that you are mortal. A fascinating reminder. A fascinating reminder. The skull in Western eyes is very grim and very melancholy and very sad, and could be seen as quite a depressing and terrifying image as we come face to face with our own mortality. However, in other cultures they don't view the skull as a grim or morbid symbol, but instead view the skull as something that is, if you look closely, laughing. You look at the grin across the face. Look how happy the skull is. That's very telling, and it should be very liberating for you. I keep it because, again, just as with the Buddha statue, it's a great reminder. Just remember, if I'm all tense and uptight and, oh God, why is all this going on? How dare they do this to me? And I spy this and go, oh, okay, right. There will come a day, none of this matters at all. It could not matter any less. And it's nothing to worry about at all. Chattering finch and waterfly are not merrier than I. Here among the flowers I lie, laughing everlastingly. No, I may not tell the best, surely, friends, I might have guessed, and death was but the good king's jest. It was hid so carefully. G.K. Chesterton's poem, The Skeleton. So that's an interesting one to contemplate. That might be a bit much for a lot of people, actually, particularly if we're just getting into meditation or just getting into Buddhism. But the contemplation of death. I mean, death is like, it's the big one, isn't it? My anxiety was very severe, so I go to very severe forms of meditation because I wanted rid of anxiety. I was done with anxiety, and I didn't want to kill myself. So there must have been a new way to look at things. And that was quite a big one for me, is the removal of the fear of death, because there is nothing to fear. We can be afraid of how we arrive there, we can be afraid of pain, we can be afraid of suffering, but being afraid of the state of being anything to fear, because there will no longer be anyone there to be afraid. There will no longer be anyone there to suffer. There will no longer be anyone there to be filled with regret and sadness and tragedy and wanting things and needing things. There's nobody there anymore. Nobody there. There's nothing to be afraid of. And if we contemplate this, it actually gives more joy and value and meaning to our living life, to our daily life. Not in a method of like, oh God, I've got to enjoy myself as much as I can before I die, because it's actually that, well, ultimately nothing will matter either. In a sense, this path of liberating yourself from the pains of life is done for you, eventually. It's not to say you don't have work to do along the way. Oh, you do. But ultimately, you'll be right. You'll be right. How do we get there? Well, here we have. I keep these two. Sometimes I only have this one up. Sometimes I only have this one up. Ultimately, they're the same card. This is the Joker and the Fool. The Joker. Lovely little reminder not to take life too seriously. The Joker, or the Jester, in a royal court, is the only person legally allowed to mock the king. Nobody else is allowed to. But there needs to be one person around who is allowed to make fun, to poke holes, to remind everybody that the game is just a game. In many card games, they don't allow the Joker, because no, that's just silly, and no, we shouldn't have the Joker there. But in many card games, if the Joker gets drawn, it's the trump card, essentially. The Joker is the card that actually undermines the entire rest of the game. And the Joker can be anything that you want it to be. You can be the highest card, the lowest card, or anywhere in between. Or sometimes it just ends the game completely. But that's the function of the Joker. It's the function of the clown. Have you ever laughed so hard that you could hardly breathe, and it's just the best feeling? It was just, you laughed so hard, everything, the joke revealed itself, and you were just howling with laughter. How good does that feel? That is the feeling of enlightenment. That is the feeling of awakening, of suddenly becoming aware that, oh, perhaps it's not serious after all. After all of that. After all of that worry. After all of that fear. Perhaps it doesn't actually matter. Perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps that's that. Perhaps that's the end of that. Perhaps it's just a laugh. Now, it's hard to come to that point, particularly if we're suffering, because how can we say, oh, we shouldn't be taking this seriously? Obviously it's serious, because I really feel it. Well, stay with that. Stay with that. But just consider, perhaps, take a look at all of your problems and zoom out. Zoom out. Just observe yourself as a person experiencing all of this. Maybe it's not all quite so serious after all. And by remembering this card, it's like you're going through life and you keep playing the hand you're dealt and getting dealt new hands, and the opponent gets dealt this hand and they play this and I play this, and we all start playing each other at this game. It gets all serious and all intense, and everyone's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Everyone's all tense and tightening up and all miserable and upset. And then all of a sudden somebody draws the Joker card, and everyone goes, oh, okay, let's just remember that actually all of this is just a game. It's just a game. That's all it is. It's a joke. Take of that what you will. Take of that what you will. But it's very important to remember, paradoxically and ironically, it's important to remember levity, and it's important to remember the joke. As said in G.K. Chesterton's poem, the skeleton, death was but the good king's jest. It was hid so carefully, and boy is that punchline hidden carefully. When you find it, it's a real knee slapper. The Fool from the Tarot. I'm not a big practitioner of the tarot, but I won't go into that. I don't know if there's anything wrong with it. I just think it could. I'll talk about this a little bit later, but the Fool, it represents a very similar aspect to the Joker. Although in the tarot it's more to do with wanderings and freedom. But do jokes and freedom go hand in hand? Let's have the freedom to laugh. Let's have the freedom to not perceive things as serious. Let's have the freedom to enjoy ourselves and to enjoy our lives. Wouldn't that be good? Let's just have a little freedom right here. When we're free, we feel happy. This is particularly, I believe, why people are so fascinated and enraptured by the figure of the Joker in the Batman films and standalone films and in the comics, because that's what's being represented here. If you look at the clown and the image of the Joker looks very much like a skull with a pale face with red lips. It looks very much corpse-like, and the terrifying image of the clown is because it reminds us of death. But it's also, the Joker represents the levity, the fact that things aren't serious. And we have Batman, who is incredibly serious and represents the rules and taking life seriously and applying the rules, and you must stick to the letter of the law. And then the Joker comes in and finds this absolutely hilarious and cannot stop laughing and is trying to show everybody the joke of this. How ridiculous it is that we have somebody who is attempting to force everyone to abide by the rules, when by its very nature this cannot be done. And so we have the two sides there, the serious Batman, let's go, and then we have the hilarious Joker saying, why so serious? And what are you laughing at? What are you laughing at, Arthur? You wouldn't get it. You wouldn't get it. He's right. You wouldn't. I'll be back in a second. I just need to have another sip of my coffee, and then we're going to talk about the empty bowl and incense. Stay with me. I just realised that I always say bear with me and hold on when I'm about to stop the camera, because for me obviously it's an intermission that I'm going to go and have a drink or use the loo or whatever, but for anyone watching it's just a split second, so there's nothing to hang on to. I don't know whether to elaborate that into a philosophical point. Nah, I guess not. It's only a split second, so there's nothing to hang on to. That's a koan for you. Go and contemplate that one. An empty bowl. Another Zen koan, a very good Zen koan, is about a monk going to a master and saying, right, I'm ready for enlightenment. Please tell me, how do I get started? I'm very, very serious about this. How am I going to achieve enlightenment? I will work tirelessly to achieve it. What should I do, oh wise master? And the master says, have you had your breakfast this morning? The monk says, yes. And the master says, well then you better go and wash your bowl. And on those words the monk was enlightened, as the story goes. That's a koan, so make of that what you will. If there is any meaning in that, then go ahead. So that's one of the koans that spoke to me. Okay, it's a way of not getting ahead of yourself, and a way of not seeing yourself as this ego. Like, right, it's very important on the spiritual path to ensure that you're not try to leave one ego behind, and then we very quickly start putting on the adornments of a seeker or a meditator or a monk. And all we've done is just taken off one suit and put on another suit. It's about taking off one suit and never putting on another suit. Just leave it. There's no point in switching masks. Just take the masks off completely. Just leave them. Leave them. So that's what's being said there, I believe, is the Master is saying, oh, right, well, you know, you're all ready for your journey, are you? Well, wash your bowl. And that's it. It never gets more complicated than that. You've had your breakfast, then wash your bowl. Simple. Yeah. You've had your breakfast, then wash your bowl. On that point, another fantastic words from another enlightened master was that people asked him what's your secret and what's your supernatural power with Zen. And he said, you want to know my secret? You want to know what enlightenment feels like? It is chopping wood and carrying water. Simple. So simple. Oh, what a relief. I thought it was going to be this whole big thing, really unattainable, and I can't do it. Now you chop wood and carry water, and we'll get there. The other thing about the bowl, a really good one, another koan, is which is the bowl? Is the clay the bowl, or is the space the bowl? I won't elaborate on that one. I'll leave that with you. Incense. This is an absolute banger. Nag Champa. This is a classic brand as well. It's good stuff. It's got none of the artificial stuff or anything. It's all very authentic and imported. Dirt cheap as well. That box was like £1. And what does it smell like? It smells like any time you've ever been into a spiritual shop or been at a spiritual stall at fairs or anything, there's a very specific smell. It's quite sweet, but also got this very strange and unusual scent to it. That is the scent of Nag Champa, and I guarantee you get some, smell it, you'll instantly be reminded. If you've ever been in anyone's house who's a little bit into the spiritual side of things or does meditation, it's that incense that you've most likely smelt. It reminded me when I first started smelling it. I was like, oh, it awoke a childhood memory for me. Very pleasant memory, actually, of a friend's house that I used to go to, and his mum would always have that incense burning. Very strong, very powerful. And smell and memory are very closely linked. So incense can be a very good tool for, as a reminder, I would say. I would call it a reminder rather than a pointer, because the only pointer is the present moment and direct experience of now. But the incense can help just bring our body and mind maybe to a calmer place. Because if you smell this incense whilst meditating and find deeper places of calmness and serenity, unconsciously your mind is linking that smell to that state. And so when we smell that again in future, if you light up that incense, such is the physiological response that we bring ourselves into that slightly calmer place and that more spacious place. And I've just got an incense burner box. Actually, oh, whoopsie daisy. Sorry, incense. This is a lovely box, actually. Huge one, as you can see. I'm a very messy person, and I don't even bother to clear up my incense. It's awful, terrible. And that's just quite a nice box with it, really. I would suggest get a bigger one rather than one of those tiny little ones, because otherwise the incense, the ash just gets absolutely everywhere. And there are worse things to get everywhere than a bit of ash. Wonderful. So that's essentially my props in my little shrine here. That's why they're there, and that's what they represent. However, is any of that necessary? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And these are just things that have just generally just picked up over the years that I guess I'm getting a little bit too attached to as well. And actually, if I'm fully on the path, this is all just as blank and meaningless as anything, because you should be able to use anything as our point of awareness. You feel a cold breeze, that brings us into the present. We hear bird song, it's the present. Anything at all. If you put your socks on, there we go, it brings us into the present. Every little thing is just the same as anything else. There is nothing more magical about these objects than this trainer. Facts, there we go. Says it all. Says it all. Just as good. Just as useful. So, I see what he's saying. But if it fills your boots, then it fills your boots. It's fine. And if it helps, then it helps. And I'm not going to get into it's all this tit for tat. It's like, no, my way is better than your way. Your way's wrong, my way's right. We're just falling back into the same old issues, the same old arguments. My guru is holier than your guru. My religion is better than your religion. And it sounds like just a little bit of a discussion to start with. But how quickly does that escalate into global wars? So we've got to nip it in the bud right where it starts. Anyone's practice is no better or worse than mine. It just is. This is simply my individual expression of self. This is where I arrived. And try it. Try just being without. Just without. Your incense, your chimes and gongs. Chimes and gongs work in just the same way as the incense works, because our ears are resonating with the memory of previous states when we've got ourselves there. And we don't have to believe in anything magical, a magic frequency of the gong or the magical power of the incense. That requires belief, and belief can be shaken. Belief can be doubted. Direct experience can't be doubted, and all you need is a taste of serenity, and you will be utterly convinced. I don't know why that's bothering me now, but many people have made a base camp 10 meters away from the summit. They've climbed this whole mountain, they've climbed this entire journey, and they were nearly at the top, very nearly at the top, and because they were nearly at the top, the mists roll in. And so they make a base camp, and they try and wait out the mist. But the mist persists, and the mist just stays, and the fog gets denser and denser, until they have made a home in this base camp and are no longer trying to get to the summit. Because in order to get to the summit, you would have to abandon your base camp and just go. And just take a leap of faith and just make your way to the top without a care in the world for if you're going to fall off the edge. You just go for it. And there are many people who have made such tremendous strides in their progress with their meditation and their spirituality, and then at some point the mist rolled in and they begin to get too into the tarot cards. They begin to get too into the incense. I need to get all of these incenses, and I need to get a specific kind of robe, and I need to buy every single Buddha that I find. I need to cover my house in all of this. I need to cover my house in all these symbols and runes, and I need to accrue all of this and wear all of this and get this tattoo, and I need to listen to this specific type of music, and I need to associate with this specific kind of person. There's nothing wrong with any of these things, but if you think that doing those things, the action, will result in a deeper sense of peace, a deeper spirituality, and a deeper enlightenment, you will be mistaken. We have to constantly refresh, just keep hitting refresh. Because how quickly we become attached. In doing this video, I've realised how attached I've become to these things. Reflecting already, how quick I was to take that shoe back off. It's like, no, I can't have a trainer up there. This is my sacred sort of space. Ridiculous. If you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. I should really go away and throw all of this stuff in the bin now, because it's now become apparent to me that I've actually started to become attached to it. And now I'm so attached to it, my ego's so strong that I'm making a video about it. I'm so clever, please somebody out there notice me, please somebody out there give me some approval that I understand spirituality more than the next person, I understand Buddhism, but surely there's somebody out there who can approve of my knowledge and wisdom. It's absurd. There is no knowledge, there is no wisdom, there are no props. And how liberating that is. There is no right way. There is no wrong way. There is nothing you can do about it, actively or passively. You cannot take hold of it, and you cannot get rid of it. The mosquito that bites the iron bull, the unstoppable force that meets the immovable object. The real trying to hold on to the unreal, and the unreal trying to hold on to the real. This is where you exist, in the middle. So let go. There is nothing that can be done. Everything that is simply is. All is temporary. Whether you doubt my words or believe my words, it is nothing. Whether I'm right or I'm wrong, it is nothing. Whether I exist or I don't, it is nothing. Whether enlightenment is or is not, is nothing. It is nothing. There is no Buddha. There is no skull. There is no death. There is no Joker. There is no incense. There is no life. There is a happening. There is now. There is the way. There is what is. And we can rest within that, because we no longer have the burden of trying to understand everything. We must hold on. We must hold on and figure this out. We must really get to the bottom of this. Get to the bottom of what? Get to the bottom and there is nothing there. And there never was. Take some time to be without anything at all. And you'll see how much richness and life and vibrance just arises out of that nothingness. By letting go of all of our attachments, we let go of the tiny little bit of gold that we had. Let go, turn around and find a vast treasure. That is everything that I have for you today. If I carried on talking, I would merely defile myself further. Stay well out there, team. Peace, love, joy, everything to you.